Thank you for joining us tonight for Travel Talk Tuesday. We're in 2021, March the 2nd. I cannot believe it's a brand new month. And we're coming up on the 1-year anniversary, I guess we should say, of COVID-19 being a factor that impacts travel. And this time last year, we, Charlotte, my wife and I, and Leslie, who works with us, were getting ready to go up to Washington, D.C. to a travel show and to sell our tours. And we actually went that weekend. And we returned back on Sunday night, and then all heck broke loose the next day and the next few days. And travel was canceled. The president shut down travel into the United States and consequently the rest of the world. And you know where we are now. But if this video hangs on for a few years or 10 years or so and someone's looking at it, they may not even remember what COVID-19 and the pandemic that shut down the world for a year is. So at least we're recapping it here. But on a positive note, tonight we're talking about one of my most favorite places to visit in Italy, and actually in all of Europe, and that is the Cinque Terre. That means the 5 Cinque Terre lands, or the 5 villages that are located on the bend in the Mediterranean Sea, or more importantly, what we know as a Ligurian Sea, because the region, the state of Liguria is on that seaside in the Cinque Terre. Now, if you're thinking about it, it's between Pisa and where France is, and I'll show you a map in just a few more minutes, but this region has been around for ages and ages. The Romans discovered it somewhat, but it wasn't until the Middle Ages when there were settlers that settled and built these 5 little towns around ravines and rivers that flowed out of the mountains into the sea. And these towns were built on the seaside, so consequently, everyone who lived there initially were fishermen or farmers. And as farming took hold, there was no flat land because, as you'll see in some of the videos soon, the land is just rugged mountainsides. I mean, literally dropping, 80 or 90 degrees directly down into the sea, and rocky coastline. And so the inhabitants of the area, these little villages, would make terraces, and they would take dry stone, or they would take the stone and the rock from the area and build walls without any mortar or anything. So dry stone walls. The Italian term for that is mura, which is a wall. Secco, dry is dry. So mura al secco. And they would put them there, stack them up, and then backfill those walls with dirt. And they would have an area maybe 10 or 12 feet wide that they would plant their crops on, or their olive trees on, or their grapevines on. And over the last 1,300, 1,400 years, those walls have just developed and grown and grown and grown, and until they're just, you look at it from the seaside and the entire place is terraced. I think I heard a fact one time is that if you were to put all those dry stone walls together that are in the Cinque Terre region, it would stretch around the world 7 times. There was more stones in those walls than the Great Wall of China, I've heard as well. But anyway, it's kind of amazing. Now, what happened also is in the Middle Ages, these little towns were on the seaside. But as people began to explore, there were invaders and pirates that were sailing the Mediterranean Sea. And so the folks of these villages began to build a refuge, or a santuario, up in the mountains way above the villages, sometimes a couple of miles above the villages. And they would build, there would be a church, and there would be a secondary town up in the santuario where they would evacuate to when they saw pirates or invaders coming into their villages. And so the people that lived there were intact for ages and ages and ages. Now, in the 20th century, a lot of things happened. In the late 19th century, in 1870, Italy was unified, and all the little states became a part of the country of Italy. And at that time, the railroad system was expanded, and it was expanded into the Cinque Terre region. And the railroad connected those 5 towns, which were only previously connected by the sea and footpaths. And those 5 towns were connected by the railway. And the railway was kind of crazy because even now you're still in those same tracks and tunnels that were developed in the late 1800s and early 1900s. And for the most time, if you're riding the train between the 5 villages, you're under the mountain in a tunnel. And occasionally you'll come to the sea will pop out if you're looking out the window of the train, and darkness will turn into light, and you just see crystal clear blue seas out. But that's what happened. And then as the age of tourism developed, especially in the 1970s, guidebook writers started writing about this wonderful undiscovered region of Italy called the Cinque Terre. And what happened there was that many people began coming there and exploring there. And the folks that lived there were, before that time, say in the 1950s and 60s, were scratching out their life as farmers and fishermen. And then all of a sudden, in the 1970s and beyond, it became a tourism destination. And so people would come in, stay a day or two, and go out. And in the 1970s, the late 1970s, a roadway was built down into the Cinque Terre villages from the motorway that was about 20 miles away. And so more people started coming. And then in the 1990s, in like 1997, I think, the Italian government recognized that there was some money to be made here, and they designated the entire area a UNESCO World Heritage Site. They designated the entire area a national park, and then UNESCO designated it as a World Heritage Site. And up until 2019, it's just been flooded 7-8 months a year with tourists from all over Europe, all over the United States, all over the world coming in, staying in these small little towns. So it is a wonderful, great destination. And I'm going to roll this in just a minute. I'm going to roll this, and we'll take a look at a map, and let me give you a little information about that. We'll let that roll. I think I'm back sharing my screen here. This is the town of Monterola in the summertime. It's the only sandy beach in the 5 villages. And this is the village farthest to the northwest. Now, here's a map of Italy, the one we've been using week after week after week, chronicling my Best of Italy tour. And that tour is a 15-day tour beginning in Rome for 2 days. And then from there, we get on a train after 2 days in Rome, and we go up the Ligurian coast to what is known as the Cinque Terre. And it's about a 4-hour ride on the train, or an 8-hour ride in a bus or a car. So we take the train just to maximize our time. And we arrive in the Cinque Terre. It's right here in this region. In a few minutes, I'm going to talk about some of the food and wine and stuff that we're eating and drinking tonight. But I just want to point out this little area right below the Cinque Terre in the region of Tuscany. And I'm going to talk about some olive oil from there. But I just want you to know, I don't know if you can see my pointer at all, but it's just below the Cinque Terre on the coastline in this area of Tuscany that we go past some olive groves and some vineyards. And this is where this particular olive oil I'm going to talk about comes from. The Cinque Terre consists, as I've mentioned before, of 5 little towns. And there we go. And the town down the farthest to the south is known as Rio Maggiore. And then there's 4 more villages that are about, on the train, 3 minutes apart. If you're walking, about an hour and a half, 2 to 2.5 hours apart. And if you're on a boat, about 30 minutes apart. So they're very close. The entire length of the coastline there is just a little over 30 miles or so. And so we have Rio Maggiore in the bottom. We have the next town over, let me get this out of the way. The next town up is Monorola, and then Cornelia. Cornelia is a town on the hillside located about 300 feet above sea level. So it's the only one that doesn't have like what we know as a beach. And then we have Vernacha and Monterola al Mare. And so those are the 5 villages of the Cinque Terre. Okay, tonight I've got several different things. We're having some appetizers that are reminiscent of the Cinque Terre. We're having some semblance of mixed fried fish, which you can get everywhere. And that's whatever's fresh that comes out of the ocean that day. And usually that would be calamari or and some sort of shrimp and clams maybe, and some mussels and those sort of things. And excuse me. And they're all put together with no batter on them really. And they're just fried in oil and they show up on your table and you eat that. And they call it mixed fried fish. So we have some of that too. I didn't cook it fresh. It's fresh out of the freezer with our air fryer, but I have some shrimp and calamari on my plate that I'm going to be munching on. I also have back here behind me my favorite dish from the Cinque Terre, and it's Pesto Lasagna. And it's from the area of Liguria, and this is a recipe that I prepared over and over again, and it's just fantastic, and I'm going to show you right now how we do that. Pesto lasagna is one of my favorite dishes when visiting the Cinque Terre. This recipe includes mixing these ingredients together to make the green pesto sauce, which includes a couple of plants of basil, that's 1/2 of your ingredients, 50 grams of pine nuts that have been toasted, that's another 1/4 of your ingredients, and then 40 grams of Parmesan cheese, which is another 1/4 of your ingredients. All of that is combined together with a clove of garlic, some olive oil, a lemon zest and lemon juice, and salt and pepper to taste. You mix it together in a mortar and pestle or a blender, and you come up with the sauce you see here. Next, I boiled about 8 sheets of lasagna pasta for about 8 minutes in boiling water and laid it out on the counter to kind of drain and dry, and it'll be used as a base. There is a white sauce called Bechamel that is used as well, and it consists of a 1/2 stick of melted butter, and once it's melted you put 50 grams of flour in there, mix it around, and this becomes the roux, and then you add into it a bay leaf, about 28 ounces of warmed whole milk, freshly grated nutmeg is sprinkled on at the end, and you can season it up near the end once you taste it with the nutmeg, a dash or 2 of vinegar, some salt, and some pepper until it tastes great. If the sauce comes out to be a little lumpy, there's no problem with taking it and putting it in a blender to smooth it on out to make it nice and creamy and velvety. But here you see I'm putting the milk into this roux I've made. It is a little bit lumpy, so I did go ahead and put it, used a stick mixer to put it in there. And this is what I ended up with. It's boiling, looks really great. I put a couple of drops of vinegar in there to add a little bite to it, and then again the nutmeg and salt and pepper at the end. Then I layered 4 sheets of the cooked pasta at the bottom of the pan, spread on the pesto sauce, followed by the bechamel sauce, and that was the first layer. And then put on another layer of pasta once that was done, and put another layer of pesto and bechamel, and then 1/3 layer the same way. Then finally I put the bechamel on the top layer, and then sprinkled on the nutmeg and pine nuts, and Parmesan cheese went on the top of it, and I'm going to put it in the oven and bake at about 375 degrees. So I'm back on full screen. Let me talk a little bit just about this meal that I'm preparing. I'm drinking wine, but it's not from the Cinque Terre. So because there is a very specific type of grape that grows on the seaside, and it's a mixture of several of these white grapes that grow on the seaside, but the production is so limited that there's no export at all. So if you go there, you have to drink the Cinque Terre wine in the Cinque Terre, or you can go to a wine shop and have it shipped home to you. But you cannot buy it here in the United States, at least at an affordable price. So tonight I'm drinking a white wine that's pretty good, but it's nowhere near, it's in Tuscany. So it's about 30 miles away from the Cinque Terre. And this is a wine called Vernacha, and it's from a little village in Tuscany between Florence and Pisa called San Gimignano. And so it's a white wine that grows only there, and there's quite a bit of an export there. So it's a good, crisp, nice, clean white wine that's easily drinkable and pretty affordable too. So in lieu of the Cinque Terre dark wine, I'm drinking the Vernacha. And so that's that. And I've already showed you the pesto. I'm going to pop it in the oven in a few minutes, and it'll be done before we finish up here. And so let's go on. Many years ago, Nancy, I see you on here, so I think you might be in this video, but I think in 2007, I was still teaching school, as a band director, and we took a few friends, including Nancy and a few others, to the Cinque Terre and other parts of Tuscany in hopes of being a film star, a movie star, and making my own movie or my own travel show about traveling around Italy. I think Cinque Terre was one of the destinations. Siena, Volterra, and Florence, I think, were all the destinations we hit. But this is some vintage video from back then. Gosh, you can tell how much things have changed as far as video quality, but the content is pretty good. So let me share my screen here and play a little bit of this. If it gets too bad, I may fast forward ahead. Hey, Diane, thanks for joining again tonight. I'll see you on Facebook along with a few others. If you're on Facebook, please send me a like or a comment. I'll be glad to address it. If you have any questions. My friend Mike Chrissinger filmed this way back in 2007 with me.
The Cinque Terre. In English, that means the five lands. And it's a loose-knit community of 5 villages connected together by trails and by the sea. For centuries, people have etched out a living here, either by fishing, working the vineyards, or raising crops. Each village has its own character, its own local people, and its own dialect.
No.
Quello è timo, questo è rosmarino.
Rosmarino!
E quello timo.
Timo.
Let me stop it there for just a minute, because back then in 2008, I thought I knew a little Italian, but since I was a singer, I knew singing in Italian, and that was about it. So these guys were trying to tell me what kind of herbs they have right here, and they were going to give me some to take and cook. So timo, now that I know, is thyme, and rosmarino is rosemary. And you can all pick that up. But at that point, I was pretty much able to say thank you, grazie, and that was about it.
Timo.
Vada Maurizio, vai.
Bella.
I think I'm saying beautiful.
Very good.
Lo sbriciola per profumo sulla pizza.
Hey, Marcia, thank you guys for watching on Facebook too, you and Larry.
Grazie.
Tell me to put it on pizza or my steak.
Monterola al Mare is the largest of the 5 Cinque Terre villages. It's really 2 villages in one, with an old town and a new town, separated by a mountain. There's a pedestrian tunnel linking the two.
In the Middle Ages, this was the castle area of Monterola al Mare. There was a fort here, and it's where the people would run to when pirates would invade the area. Today, it's a monastery, and this path here is called the Switchback of the Monks. Behind me is the local cemetery.
The Church of the Capuchin Monks sits near the cemetery. Inside, you'll find this impressive altarpiece painting of St. Francis, as well as a painting by the Dutch master Van Dyck, who lived and worked for many years in nearby Genoa. We're in the oldest part of Monterola. In the Middle Ages, this cemetery would have been within the castle walls, tucked safely behind the hills.
By the way, all this music here is originally composed by my students. So you hear it playing, and we kind of like went by, and so the music here is composed by Michael Collins. He was one of my students as well. So pretty good collaboration between me and my music students.
Out of the view of invading pirates. Even today, the cemetery is a sacred place. The local citizens keep it tidy and decorated with fresh flowers, as well as black and white memento photographs of their lost loved ones. Here, at the summit, are the graves of some of Monterola's most famous priests.
So that was
Rio Maggiore. In English, that means major river. And up until about 30 years ago, the river ran down through the middle of town where you see Main Street today.
Well, we've reached the top of town. The elevator was a good ride up here.
I could have walked the stairs from the train station below, but my Cinque Terre car...
By the way, in 1997, when it became a national park, they got a lot of funding from the Italian government and from UNESCO, and so a lot of infrastructure was built. Not only some new train tracks, but also those elevators that you see, and some lifts and some special internet points and all of that. But by the time 2009, 2010 came around and the world went into sort of a recession. Italy and the government and the Park Service that controlled all this area was found out that they were very corrupt and had squandered all of the money, and that although they were able to build these lifts and elevators and moving staircases and park offices, there was no funding to staff it. So along about 2011 or so, there was a devastating flood that came through and ran mudslides and everything in some of the villages, and they never opened up those infrastructure again. So from 2011, they just sat dormant. And it's like that today. At least it was in 2019 when we arrived. Incompleted lifts and elevators. And so it's a sad thing, but hopefully things are going to come back and look better as we move on into 2021.
And allowed free use of the town's elevator. During the Middle Ages, Rio Maggiore's inhabitants lived in the hills, which offered protection from raiders traveling by sea. By the way, doing the laundry hasn't changed much in those 900 years.
Getting cash here in the Cinque Terre or anywhere in Europe is the same way. We use our ATM debit card, just like you use at home. Insert it in the machine just like we would do it at home. It asks you what language you'd like. English, Italian. I'll choose English. Punch in your PIN code. And then choose the amount of money that you'd like to draw out. I've chosen to draw out 250 euro. Take your money and receipt. So it spits out euro cash, and our bank at home will do the conversion and take it out of my checking account at home. This entire area is designated as a national park, and so the Italian government has soaked funds into the area to preserve its antiquated style. So we have to do a Cinque Terre pass to go into the paths. Okay. Grazie.
The Via dell'Amore, the pathway of love. If you're not into hiking and want to experience the Cinque Terre, You need to take a walk on the Via dell'Amore. It's a short 20-minute level stroll between the villages of Riomaggiore and Monorola. Ah, the easy life of travel.
This is a graffiti wall on the Via dell'Amore, the walkway of love. David and Charlotte. Italy might be famous for its gelato, but Europe is famous for the Magnum bar. That's what I travel here for. There's nothing like it. Magnum Classico. Buongiorno.
Buongiorno, com'è? È bello, ma ti piace?
Sì, sì.
Beautiful.
Beautiful. Grazie, signore.
Ciao.
That was before Magnum
This
bars
is
were
good.
available in the United
The
States.
Magnum bar.
I
Yep.
think showed up
You
here.
gotta try one.
I think I bought one in here.
We're ending our day in Cornelia, and this is La Ristorante La Terna. And Katie and I are sampling the antipasto di mare, La Casa.
Pasta della Santa.
And, ecco,
Tin fish
Fegato di
dishes.
tonno affumicato,
Sì.
tonno affumicato, pesce spada affumicato, insalata di mare, gamberi e fagioli, acciughe alla ligola, acciughe al limone.
oh. Ah, so we have a little bit of everything. The achuga, thank you very much. Thank you.
Achuga, as we know as anchovies. And we're accustomed to getting anchovies here in a can in oil, but these are fresh out of the sea every day. And they're served salted or not salted. And they have olive oil. If they're not salted, they have olive oil and maybe with some potatoes. And the other antipasti antipasti means the dish before you have your main course. And all of these restaurants here are famous for having their 10-course antipasti, where if you love that, you don't have to get anything else. Very inexpensive, probably for about €12. We got all of that stuff, and we shared it all. But several different types of fish, like tuna and swordfish, with various treatments on it, calamari. All of this was none of this was fried. It was all prepared, either boiled or baked in some way or raw. And so it was all there, but the chuga is something different there in the Cinque Terre. So I'm going to try to get Katie, who's
Anchovies.
tried
Yes. Thank you.
it. You guys.
What do you think? What'd you have? I'm gonna have the achuga. This is achuga limone. That's the best anchovy I've ever had. Did you eat it all?
The anchovy?
Yeah, that anchovy right there. Try that. It's not like an anchovy in a can.
Okay, right now we have glasses of shakacha and contucci. This is like biscotti. What you do is you take the contucci and you dip it in the shakacha. Everyone else?
Shakacha is a dessert wine.
It soaks up.
Very
You
sweet.
eat it. It's really sweet. Or you can just drink it. It's better that way. It's very good.
Many of you know that I was a music teacher for, 30 years, teaching band. I majored in vocal music as well. And so consequently, I get to take some performing groups on tours in Europe. And this was several years back, Niceville High School from over in the panhandle of Florida with director Michael Dye. had their group and went throughout Italy. And this is the church, the church in Vernacha, and they're preparing they're giving a concert. Okay, sorry, the church in Monterola, and they're giving a concert right there. So I have some helpers over here that are keeping me straight, giving me. I listen to the acoustic because this is their scenic doctor. I don't know how many choirs you get to hear. This high school choir is one of the top-notch schools. Again, Niceville High School director Michael Dodd. Typically, when we do one of these student tours, there's, depending on if it's a band or choir, anywhere from 50 to 200 students going along.
Today we're
and we also offer a tour for the parents as well. We call it the shadow tour, so that the parents who don't want to go along as chaperones with the students can go along. And Charlotte usually leads those shadow tours, and there's usually 20, 30 parents that go along, and they can go along and have fun activities, adult activities. They can go out for dinner and all that stuff without being chaperones. And so it's very good for that too. So hopefully we can kick those back off again. Gosh, I'm thinking probably students won't be able to travel for another year and a half or so. So maybe 2023 or something, students can get back to traveling, who knows. But anyway, so here's some filming. We filmed this in 2014, and this is about getting around Italy, because I found the most expedient way and the fastest way to get around Italy is on this train, on these trains. And they have fast bullet trains and local regional trains. So here's about train travel in Italy.
doing a little traveling by train. We've left Rome about an hour ago and traveling up to Liguria to the Cinque Terre. So we're paralleling the Mediterranean coast. And traveling by train is a great way to get from one destination to the other. Italy is well connected with public transportation. I like to piece together Italy using the train because we can travel great distances in a short amount of time. Once you're situated and seated in the train, it's comfy all the way. But there are a couple of things that you need to know. First of all, it helps to get your tickets ahead of time. Once you do have your ticket, you need to validate it in a little box. You should pack light, carry a smaller carry-on size suitcase, because you will have to carry that from the platform into the train and lift it above your head just like on an airline and put it there. For us traveling on these trains, we have an opportunity to interact with people. We encountered a lady who wanted to engage us in conversation and to speak English because she was practicing and learning her English. So it's a fun opportunity to engage and to try out some communication skills that you might not be willing to do if you weren't right there in the environment.
There you go, baby.
Some of the trains have a dining car in it that you can go and get your lunch or dinner, but I much more prefer to, at the station before you leave, to stop and pick up a cheap picnic. So I've got a caprese sandwich here, a Diet Coke, a couple of crackers and chips, and this will make for a great dining experience and with the scenery and whatnot, so that when we reach our destination we can hit the ground running. So I'm going to eat lunch, I think. So your adventure starts right here with David McGuffin's Exploring Europe. So salute from Italy.
And we segue right into the segment on the Cinque Terre filmed in 2014. This is filmed by another one of my former students, Abby Austin Whitaker.
The village of Monterola is a great place to start your adventure here on the Cinque Terre. This is the first of the 5 villages, so we have Monterola, and then behind me, the next village down in the sunlight is Vernacha, which will be our next destination. Let's check out Monterola. All right, so we walked around the point. Now there's a tunnel down here on the left that connects the old and
Hey, I'm gonna stop it for a minute because I stepped back and I wore this t-shirt specifically for tonight. This is a t-shirt that Charlotte made, and I can't read it, but because it's too far away from the camera, but it's got all kind of travel words on it, like wine, drink, eat, adventure. You could read it. What does it say right in the middle? Travel. And then on the backside, it's got my Exploring Europe logo and whatnot. But she did a great job on this. And so I thought I'd show it off tonight. So there you go. My David McGuffin's Exploring Europe travel t-shirt.
new town, but this is the old town of Monterola. The old towns have definitely a lot more charm, but it's very convenient and a little bit more modern to stay in Monterola in the new town. So the path we're walking up is going up the mountain to the cemetery and to the monastery above Monterola. And you can tell I'm huffing and puffing a little bit. In English it's called the Switchback of the Friars. Italian is the Zii dei Frati. And we'll come up on, in a moment, a bronze statue of St. Francis, which looks out over the Ligurian Sea in Monterola. So this is the Capuchin Monastery of St. Francis. So you see the black and white facade, and looking out, this beautiful cross right in front of the vineyards. And there used to be quite a few friars up here. There's only one that takes care of the entire village. This is a nice refuge from what could be a crowded town down below. Okay, we've reached the old town here in Monterola, and it's loaded with character. All of these villages have little wine shops and cafes and meat shops. There's a butcher shop beside me. This is one of the main squares here, and as you can see, some of the locals are gathering here to chat and talk. It's about noon, so they're getting ready to go eat some lunch and take their siesta. So we're heading back to the next village, to Vernacha, so let's go. All right, we're at the train station in Monterola, and if we're heading in the direction toward La Spezia, back toward Pisa, then the trains are always going to be on the track that's closest to the mountainside. And if you're heading in the direction toward here, Monterola or Levanto, the trains will always be on the ocean side. That's a very important point for catching the correct train going in the right direction here in the Cinque Terre. Hey, it's also very important to realize that at some of the train stations, you're actually inside a tunnel, like here in Vernacha. So when the train stops, even though you don't see the station, you need to go ahead and get off. A good rule of thumb is to keep account of the villages that you want to visit and know if it's village 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and how many stops it is to get there. Okay? A very important thing that happened here on October 25th, 2011. This village was flooded and a big mudslide came down the mountain and covered this town with 10 or 12 feet of mud all the way down the road to the harbor. It all came right down here. And this was filled up way up to the second floor. I was here last September and a friend of mine that owns a restaurant told me that they had just opened 6 weeks ago, and that was after 2011. For me, this is a quintessential town here in the Cinque Terre. I love to hike out through here and grab a place on a rock out here and just chill out on the harbor all day long. These places, although it looks uncomfortable, you can put a towel down and nestle yourself amongst these rocks. I can't count how many times I've done this route right here.
That makes me smile because Charlotte and I...
So we're going to try a little GoPro experiment here in the water. If I can get down here without getting sopping wet. It is a bit cold. Here we go.
This was in October.
This is fun. The next village down is called Monorola. I really like Monorola because it's a village on the sea, but it's not quite so touristy. So the harbor here in Monorola is a little bit different than the other harbors in that it's down about 150 feet. And so in order to get the boats from the harbor up here where they're all parked, there's a mechanical lift here that they go down and you pull the boats up and it parks here overnight. And in the morning they drop them back down, go out fishing, come back and do the same thing over and over again. And now it's kind of a swanky thing, electric, but it used to be by hoist. And so they've done this for centuries. So the harbor in Monorola. These dried spices are pretty good to take back home. They're lightweight and they're packed heavy with a lot of flavor. So every time I come here, I try to get 4 or 5 of them to take home to last me 6 months or so. One says for hot spaghetti and bruschetta and oil and peppers. So we'll see. And then you can actually walk through the vineyards where for centuries they've had these terraces there that have gardens and olive groves and grapevines on them, and walk through the entire town, and it's a great experience. Okay, I'm pausing because we need a breather here, but we've hiked up from the harbor and now we're walking up some steps through the vineyards and going to take a little tour through the vineyards that ultimately winds up at the top of the town here of Monorola. So this is an example of how people would get to the stone walls and to the vineyards up there. So you see they put these steps. You go up here, crawl up here, and then you're on one of those terraces. There's vineyards every which way. But in order to pick them, you have to get on your hands and knees underneath there and pick them. So it's a tough row to hoe job to pick here in the Cinque Terre. We've made our way to the top of the vineyards here and haven't seen a soul. So it's worthwhile making the climb to get up here and to experience the peace and quiet. 5:30. So at 45 minutes after the hour, it dings 3 times. And at quarter after the hour is 1 time. Then the hour, it dings however many hours it is. I love staying in these villages because, you know, you never even have to wear a watch. You can just listen to the church bell. That means it's time to knock off what you're doing and go have a glass of wine. I don't know. Finally, the last village in my sequence of things is the village of Rio Maggiore. I really like Rio Maggiore as well because when I go on vacation and I'm not leading tours or semi-working, we stay in the village of Rio Maggiore, way up above town, and I so much enjoy meeting the people in town, going to the store every morning and buying some fresh produce, visiting the fish truck that shows up in the mornings, and it's just a great time. So Rio Maggiore warrants some time as well. In the Cinque Terre, you cannot just go to one village and get the entire taste of the region. They all have a different character. They all have a different group of people, and they're all totally different from one another. So you'll miss out if you don't experience all the villages in the Cinque Terre.
Okay, I'm back full screen. I just remembered talking about eating and wining and dining that I was going to tell you something about some olive oil. And you saw earlier in the lasagna pesto video that I made earlier today that I have this olive oil, Kirkland's olive oil from Costco. And it says Toscano, from Tuscany. And we happened to travel with a young lady named Susan who lives there in Tuscany, in the village where actually this olive oil that Kirkland purchases every year is produced. So the trees are growing there, the locals harvest the olives in October, November. And then what happens next is that they keep the amount that they want for their year, which is probably 10 or 12 liters of it. And then the rest of it is sold to Kirkland's or Costco, and it's produced as Kirkland's signature olive oil, extra virgin olive oil from Tuscany. And I can attest that this comes from there. And this happens to be the newest batch. It's out in Costco. We just got it last week. And it was harvested last October, November, December of 2020. And it says it's best to use before June 4th, 2022, which any Italian will say, don't keep your olive oil more than a year because, you know, next year you're going to harvest your own batch again. So use what's fresh. And I can tell you that this tastes so much different. You get it out and you put a little bit in a teaspoon and you try it, just taste it naked with nothing else. And it'll make you cough. It'll be like a peppery taste, but the flavor lasts forever. And then you try with any other brand of olive oil that you might be cooking with. But it's worth the cost. What it cost, Charlotte, for this bottle, liter?
I think
$13 or something. So it's very well worth it. So I'm not getting paid by Costco or anything else. So I'm just telling you that's some good olive oil, and you can get it here pretty good. So that ends our show. Hang on, somebody's out. Who's saying? Sharon Joka. Yeah, Sharon, that is your sister. So thanks for watching. I was trying to remember Susan's last name, but of course it's an Italian name. But she and her husband, she went over there, and she's a curator for a museum, and her husband is a native Italian that lives there in Tuscany. So thanks, Sharon, for reminding me that as well. Well, that kind of concludes what we're doing for Italy and the Cinque Terre. We've been on this whole series of doing the Best of Italy tour for quite a while. And so we're going to take a break for the next couple of weeks because we're coming up, we're already in March, and we're coming up to St. Patrick's Day on the 17th. So the next 2 weeks, we're going to be doing a little exploring and poking around the island of Ireland, which is located on the Atlantic Ocean and the Irish Sea, just to the west of the United Kingdom and everything. So next week, we're going to hop on a tour. One of my tours, David McGuffin's Exploring Europe tour, our Essence of Ireland tour, and chronicle that group as they go around the island and visit the destinations on that tour. And there'll be a couple or two couples that we're going to focus on and let them share their experience of traveling on that tour with you. And then the following week, which would be the 16th, the day before St. Paddy's Day, we'll chronicle the St. Patrick's Day week activities and celebrations that normally happen in Ireland. So those two things will be pretty cool. We'll be cooking some Irish food the next couple of weeks as well. And so I hope you join us on that. We got some more comments here. Oh,
Can you see it?
yeah. So Sharon, Susan is Cesoriti, I think is their name. So thank you for that. And all you guys that are on the Zoom call, thank you again. Andy Sykes, thank you guys for looking to you, and Cindy, appreciate it. And for all of you guys on the Zoom call, there's a whole line of people up there. I see one new guy I hadn't talked to in a long time, Fred Kerr, right? Fred, you guys are you were a senator in, was it Nebraska or somewhere? I know you sent us some steaks after the tour was over that were fantastic. Kansas, not Nebraska. Charlotte's telling me Kansas. I remembered it, but thank you. I hadn't seen you in a while. Thank you guys for joining in. And some of the regulars, I appreciate that. One thing I thought of is looking at all these videos from way back. I've got many different beards. And this one might be one of the longest ones I've had in a while. I told Charlotte I'm not going to trim it until I can go to Europe, but I don't know how long she's going to let that lapse.
You may wake up with no beard.
But anyway, we'll see. Oh, Carl. Carl. Yeah, we went on. You guys went on a tour to Ireland with us as well. So good with that too. Okay, well, I'm going to sign off for tonight because I think we've got this pesto cooking over here. Let me just check on it and give you one last look. Golly, it smells great. It's got a little bit more, it's been in for 30 minutes. It's got a little more browning to do on the top. I can't get here we go. Well, I wish you were here to taste it because it's fantastic. And so we're going to do that. I'll cook it just a few more minutes. And anyway, thank you guys so much. Thank you for joining us tonight, and hope to see you next week as we talk about Ireland. Ciao, arrivederci, buonanotte, buona serata.